I want to talk to you all about something that I believe is going to help you get your life back. Everybody say measuring stick. Let me give you that definition for you all who are taking notes. A measuring stick is an instrument used to judge amount and or value. An instrument used to judge amount and or value. And I don't know if you knew this or not, but every person on the planet has a measure they use to dictate and determine the worth and value of their life. For example, a very ambitious man or woman may measure their worth and value by the profit, power, or position they obtain. A teenager may measure their worth or value by the amount of followers that they have on IG or Twitter. A single male or female may measure their worth of value of their life by their ability to attract the opposite sex. A pastor may measure his worth of value by congregation and collection size. An athlete may measure their worth of value by the number of points, touchdowns, hole-in-ones, or base hits they accomplish. But my question to you this morning is, what is your measure? What is your measure? How are you judging the worth and value of your life? I want to share a challenging and convicting story that Jesus told about a man that had the wrong measure. Luke 12:13-21 says, "Then someone called from the crowd, 'Teacher, please tell my brother to divide our father's estate with me.'" This is how you know it's going to be bad, because anytime you roll up on Jesus telling him what to do, he's going to snap. Jesus replied, "Friend, who made me judge over you to decide such things as that?" Then he said, "Beware, guard against every kind of greed. Life is not measured by how much you own." Now, this story is not just about money. Jesus uses money as the example, but we know it's not just about money, because he says, guard against every kind of greed. Then he told them this story. A rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. He said to himself, "What should I do? I don't have room for all my crops." Then he said, "I know, I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones." So he wasn't asking God what he should do. He was asking himself. "Then I'll have enough room to store all my wheat and other goods. And I'll sit back and say again to myself, my friend, you have enough stored away for years to come." He's talking in third person, so you know this guy has a lot of issues. "Now I'm going to take it easy, eat, drink, and be merry." But then God speaks. But God said to him, "You fool, you will die this very night. Then who will get what you worked for?" Yes, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship towards God. You're not a fool if you're wealthy. You're only a fool if you care more about your wealth than you do about God. You're not a fool if you're popular. You're only a fool if you consider your popularity more important than you consider God. We're not fools in God's eyes just because we're successful, just because we're smart, just because we have a prosperous life. God only considers us foolish if we consider those things more than we consider him. So I want to ask you again, Quest, how do you measure the value of your life? And I know what you're thinking, so let's just go ahead and address the elephant in the room. God, you tripping. I mean, this is harsh. I mean, you can be honest. You know that Quest is a safe place. When I read this to you, you thought God was tripping. Like, God, you just taking this too far. I mean, he was a successful man. Look at Luke 12:16. A rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. He is a CEO and founder of a Fortune 500 company. He's balling. He's got it going on. He's rich. His company is posting profits every quarter. Not only is he successful, he's financial savvy. He must have taken some Dave Ramsey classes, some financial peace. Look at it. He says, I don't have room for all my crops. In the days of antiquity, crops equaled cash. He's saying, I'm going to tear down my barns. In other words, these banks aren't big enough for my money. I'm going to take my money from Goldman Sachs and put it in JP Morgan Chase. He's saying, these barns can't handle all of the money that I'm banking. He's financially savvy. Not only is he successful, not only is he financially savvy, he's also smart. Look at 12:19. He says, I'm going to sit back and say to myself, my friend, you have enough store for years to come. He's preparing for the future. That's smart. He's not living day to day. He's actually planning for his future. So God, you're going to demand a man's life who's successful. You're going to demand a man's life who's financially savvy. You're going to demand a man's life who has enough smarts and intelligence to prepare for the future. Yes, because here's the problem. God wasn't his measure. And as a result, he didn't consider God in his decision making. And don't miss it. When God isn't first, you will never find life. Let me explain how serious this is to God so you don't think God is tripping. The children of Israel in the wilderness, and you all may know this, the children of Israel are a type or a symbol of God's children today. And so God is meeting Moses at Mount Sinai in the wilderness, and he is about to give Moses 10 rules for his children to follow. Now, parents, raise your hand if you're a parent, if you have children. Okay, so you'll feel me on this. I've got a teenage son and I've got a 9-year-old daughter, and I have a whole lot more than 10 rules. But imagine, parents, if you had to boil down all of the things that you wanted your children to do to be successful into 10 rules. How important those 10 rules would be. But the first of those 10 rules is this. Exodus 23, you shall have no other gods before me. So God is giving his children 10 rules. And the first of the 10 rules is you shall have no other gods before me. I'm only going to give you 10 rules. So the first of the 10 rules must be super important, because we know the longer a list is, the less we pay attention. So God's first rule is you shall have no other gods before me. In other words, children, your main struggle is not going to be faith. Your main struggle is going to be which God comes first. I know what you're thinking, Unique. I don't worship any other gods. Did Netflix get more time than God did this week? I hope y'all like me after this. We had so much fun the last few times I came. Y'all don't start acting. Did you roll up to the Bible or did you open up the Facebook? Did you pray this week? Or did you just run to the office for profit? See, whatever comes first is God. So even Christians struggle with polytheism. Polytheism just means the worship of more than one God. People that struggle with profit and putting God first in their money are actually struggling with which God do I serve? Do I serve the God of money or do I serve the God that sent his son for my life? A person that struggles with popularity and surrounding themselves with the wrong people, you're actually struggling with the God of popularity. A person that struggles with character, you're actually struggling with the God of integrity. You all have, and I all have other gods in our lives that we struggle with serving. And so the first rule that God gave his children was, don't put anything first. Does the God of pride come first? Do you serve yourself before you serve God? Does the God of pleasure come first? Do you put things in your life, put things in your body, put things in your mind that aren't pleasing to God because you want pleasure? Does the God of success come first? Do you lose integrity for a little extra income? Do you put down your character to pick up a little extra cash? Do you struggle with putting God first? He says, if you want me to keep it real with you, I'm going to let you know that every person, even people of faith, will have a struggle of putting me first. And here's the thing. God is big on coming first because whatever I put first shows God how I measure life. Whatever I put first actually shows and tells God what's most important to me. This is why husbands, our wives say, I want to be first. I don't care if it's football season. I don't care if the Bulldogs are playing today. I don't care if it's a nice day and you want to hit the golf course. I want to come first. Why? Because you tell me you love me by putting me first. God says, I'm not playing second. Ladies, who's single? Who's single? Raise your hand, yeah. Be proud. You may get lucky. Somebody may be looking around. You single? You all doing this? Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you're sure. There you go. All the single ladies. Yeah, there we go. Ladies, if you date a guy just because he's cute, and you don't consult God, then a man just became your measure. If you take a promotion just because it pays more and you don't consult God, then you have just shown God that promotion is your measure. If you surround yourself with friends that don't fear God, we have just shown God through that decision that he's not first and that friends are our measure. So God says in Matthew 6:33 to seek ye first the kingdom of God and all its righteousness, and then these other things shall be added unto me. At Chosen, we say it like this: when we put God in the right position, he brings the provision. When we put God in the right place, when we make God first, we actually get life. But not only do we get life given to us. And this is why a lot of us are struggling. It's because God is actually in a fight with us for our own life. We want to live life, but we don't want to let life go. And God says that if you want life, you must give up life. You can't get my life holding on to your old life. You can't get the person that I want you to date holding on to the person you want to date. You can't get the career that I want you to have holding on to the career you want to have. You can't get the friends in your life I want you to have holding on to the friends you want to have. The only way you get life back is by giving up life. See, we can't be angry with God because he's not going to let anything else be your measure. He's not going to let anything else bring you the joy he wants you to have. He's not going to let anything else bring you the peace he wants you to have. Why? Because if you put something else first, that's God. So don't be angry. Don't be frustrated that God is fighting for your life. Maybe that's the tug you feel. That you make decent money, but you don't have peace. You've got a nice home, but you're really not happy. Maybe it's because those things are your measure. Here it is. I don't know if you've ever thought about it like this, but God has designed us to make value-based decisions. A value-based decision are choices determined by what I believe will bring the greatest benefit. You don't even know that this is happening. This goes on in your subconscious. But whether you know it or not, whenever you make a decision, it's a value-based decision. You're making that decision based on what you truly believe is going to bring you the greatest benefit. This is why God always fights to be first, because he knows that we make value-based decisions. So if we make a decision without putting him first, what we're actually saying is we think the thing that we're choosing is going to bring more benefit than he does. What we're saying is that God this money, God this man, God this marriage, God this woman, God this career, God this popularity, God this power, God this influence is going to bring me more value than you. So when God sees somebody putting something else first, he gets frustrated. Why? Because nobody else has, how can I say this? How can we give something else value when it doesn't value us? How can we put something over God when God shows us how much we're valued and nobody else can even compare to the love that God has for us? I mean, God gave his only begotten son that whosoever would believe in him would not perish, but have everlasting life. And so you know that God values you because he gave up something of such high value. And I know your friend loves you. I know you're in love with your wife. I know you in love with your husband. I know you love your kids. I know you love your job. And that's all great. But none of those things can give you more value than God has. And on top of that, nothing that you have in your life is going to bring you the value that God does. Nothing in your life has the ability to love you the way God does. And so God is in a consistent fight for first, because he knows he loves you the most, and he also knows that he's given you the most. So here it is. So God tells us that he is demanding this man's life. as a reminder that anyone who tries to save their life will lose it. Listen to this man talk. He values his own voice. He's asking himself what he should do and giving himself the answer. He's not consulting God. He's not surrounded by a multitude of counselors. He values his own voice, and he values his money, which tells us that he's self-centered and selfish. So even though he's successful, even though he's financially savvy, even though he's smart, God demands his life because he's selfish and self-centered. So you can have money, you can have fame, you can have fortune, you can have power, you can have prominence, and God will snatch it all away if you're selfish and self-centered. That's what he means when he says, if you want to hold on to your life, you will lose life. But on the other hand, if you're willing to give up your life for my sake, you will find it. See, we read this verse and we think that God isn't showing grace, but he is, because he's using this text to tell us how we get life. Life can only be found in life. Oh, you missed it. Life can only be found in life. Jesus said it like this: I am the way, the truth. Come on, y'all. He said, I am the way, the truth. I'm the way, the truth. So what Jesus is saying is, you will never find life if you don't find me. You can get the promotion, you can get the boo, you can get the bae, you can have the corner office, you can have all the popularity, you can have more Twitter followers, IG followers than anybody else, but none of that equals life. He says, if you really want life, you have to find me. If you really want life, you've got to be willing to give up what you see as life. And God is not going to approve any other measuring stick. You can be mad, you can be frustrated, I can get an attitude, but God is not going to allow us to find value in anything more than him. Man, I remember my goal was to be a stockbroker in New York City. I wanted to wake up and never have to see grass. That was my filter, living a life without grass. I was not going to get married. That was my life. I live in Augusta, Georgia. I'm a pastor, and I have a wife and 2 kids. What I had to realize was that I can keep striving for my definition of success. I can keep striving for money. I can keep striving for power and prominence. But the more I strive, the more I struggled. And I'm here to tell somebody this morning, the more you strive for something that God does not desire for you to have, the more you're going to struggle. And don't get mad at God because he won't approve your measuring measuring stick. He may have let somebody else get the promotion that you deserved. Why? Because that was more than a promotion to you. It was actually your measuring stick. You were frustrated that your friend walked out on you. You were mad because they left you and started dating somebody else. But God did it out of love because you were starting to let that person become your measuring stick. And you can be mad and you can get an attitude, but God is fighting. Why? Because he loves you too much to let anything else come first. When anything other than God determines your decision, you have the wrong measuring stick. And here's what I want you to know. You can take this and you can nap for the last 5 minutes. Wrong measure leads to wrong decisions, and wrong decisions lead to the wrong life. Everybody say wrong measure, wrong decision, wrong life. Your life is a sum total of the decisions that you make. You are where you are because of the decisions that you have made, and the decisions that you make all go back to how you measure value. And so the wrong measure will lead you to the wrong decision, and the wrong decision will lead you to the wrong life. When you judge the value of your life by how much money you make, you enter business deals that cause you to put finances over family. Wrong measure, wrong decision, wrong life. When you judge the value of your life by how many friends and followers you have on social media, you post pictures and captions that please the crowd but don't please Christ. Wrong measure, wrong decision, wrong life. When you judge the value of your life by whether you married by 30, you start dating out of depression instead of godly inspiration. Wrong measure, wrong decision, wrong life. When you judge the value of how big your ministry is, and your life is contingent on how many people applaud when you preach, you start preaching what makes people happy instead of what makes people holy. Wrong measure, wrong decision, wrong life. Every decision starts with our measure, and God's saying, I want you to have the life I've called you to have, but to do that, you got to change your measure. I like John 12:25, who says it a little bit differently than Matthew says it. Whoever loves life will lose it, but whoever hates his life in this world will keep it for eternal life. I thought you'd get more excited about that. Let me try this side. He said, whoever loves his life will lose it, but whoever hates his life in this world will keep it for eternal life. He's not saying hate life as we understand hate. Hate in this day meant something a little bit different. It meant hate in comparison to something else. So what John is saying is we ought to hate anything in our life when we compare it to Jesus Christ. So what he's saying is, even if you make a lot of money, that's fine, but make sure you hate it when you compare it to your love for Jesus. Even if you're dating somebody and you're in love, that's great, but make sure when you compare your love for them to your love for Christ, it's as if you hate them. It's great to have children that you love, but when you compare your love for your children to the love you have for Jesus, it should look like you actually hate your children when you compare it to your love for Jesus Christ. What John is saying here is, I want you to love Jesus so much that you hate everything else. And what I'm telling you this morning, Quest, is that I want you to have such a love for Jesus in your life that it's as if you hate everything else. Because when your love for Jesus exceeds your love for anything else, you can actually live your life in a way that helps everything else. My wife loves the fact that I love Jesus more than I love her. Why? Because she messes up sometimes, just like I do. And if we loved each other more than we love Jesus, we would leave when we let each other down. But because we love Jesus more than we love each other, we stick around. When you love Jesus the most, everything else benefits. So John says, I want you to live your life for Jesus so that you're able to hate everything. But in your hate for everything, you're actually loving everything. And when you sacrifice your life, your 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years, on this earth, I'm going to repay you with eternal life. He says, you really can't even call it a sacrifice. It's really like an investment. Because when you invest in something, you give it up, but what happens? You get more back later. So he's saying, yeah, you may have to live your 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years for me. But if you make that sacrifice here, I'm going to bless you with life somewhere else forever. So I'm going to bless you for the sacrifice that you made. So he tells this story to remind us that the life we give up here is going to be a blessed life later. Yeah, I'm asking for you to give up life here, but I'm going to give you more life later. So he tells the story to remind us that if you try to hold on to something too tight, like this man held on to his life, his money, his career, his business too tight, you'll lose it. But if you are willing to give up your life, your business, your career, your ministry for God, He'll give it back to you. Anyone who wants to get life back must be willing to give life up. Anybody that wants to get life back must be willing to give life up. John said last week that the devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But Jesus came so that we may have life and have it to the full. So here's what I want you to remember. Putting God first leads to a filled life. God coming first leads to a filled life. Giving up our life gets us God's life back forever. I know it's hard. I know it's difficult. But don't leave here without realizing that Jesus has the right to your life. He bought it with a price. If you don't have a relationship with Jesus Christ, I'm so glad that you're here. Quest is a great place and it's for you. But I don't want you to leave here without knowing that God loved you so much that He would actually trade His life for yours. So He's not asking for anything that He does not have the right to have. So if you have not made that decision, I want you to consider it this morning. Give your life to Jesus so that you can have life to its fullest.